In this video, I'll explain Zazen meditation, what it is, and how to practice it. So, probably the most important keyword you might think about is something called shikantaza, which is a Japanese word, and it means just sitting. Just sitting. So this is what makes Zazen a bit distinct, perhaps from other forms of meditation. It really emphasizes almost a lack of effort or a lack of really intentionally directed practice. And what I mean by that is you can imagine a more of a contemplative or generative meditation where, for instance, you are trying to direct your focus into embodying compassion or love or feeling some sort of emotional state. Or even something like yoga, where you're kind of actively moving and trying to anchor your awareness into the sensations of the body and the movement. Zazen is quite literally just sitting. And it has to do with objects of awareness. Now, think about this. In any sort of meditation, you have some sort of object of your awareness, right? That is kind of the anchor that you bring your awareness back to over and over again. And that's really what meditation is. So you're training your awareness, your ability to maintain your focus and attention to the present moment through coming back to that object. So, and again, we'll use the analogy of yoga. Every time my mind wanders off and I'm thinking about what I'm going to have for lunch or all these things I'm worried about, I come back to the pose or the sensation of the stretch or the movement of my body. And every time I come back, that's sort of like one repetition of building that attention muscle. So there are a variety of different objects of meditation, right? You can focus on the body, you can focus on sounds, you can focus on a guided meditation, you can focus on generating some sort of image or sensation, you can focus on your breathing, you can control your breathing. In this case, you can almost think of gradually more subtle objects of awareness until you end up just sort of turning the lens of awareness back on itself, and it's sort of just awareness of awareness. And that is, I think, the closest approximation to what I would talk about for Zazen. Dogen Zenji, the founder of Zen Buddhism, so to speak, or sort of the pioneer in Japan, he talked about taking the backward step. So it's really similar to a lot of the definitions you hear around mindfulness, which is paying attention to the present moment on purpose, non-judgmentally. So again, you're really just sitting and experiencing the experience of awareness. So talk a little bit about the history, again, which makes Zazen distinct, and then we'll talk about how to do it. So it actually began with the Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha in India, right? His enlightenment, etc. And from that initial sort of first enlightenment, Buddhism branched off in all these various different streams. And there is one of them that first came about when you have a gentleman named Bodhidharma, who lived thousands of years ago, who walked from India to China. And he advocated this style of meditation that was just sitting. Just sitting. In fact, he was famous for, I believe he sat in front of a wall and just stared at the wall for about 9 years. And then that was his sort of enlightenment story. So he took that to China with this emphasis that became Chan Buddhism, which again emphasized this sort of non-differentiated awareness of the present moment, just sitting, resting in this awareness. And then this came to Japan by way of a Dogen Zenji, who founded what we often think of now as Zen Buddhism today. And then that came to the West via Suzuki Roshi, who founded the San Francisco Zen Center in the late 60s, and several other teachers. And then, interestingly, are the modern kind of mindfulness movement, when you think about someone like Jon Kabat-Zinn, who was the first to bring mindfulness into clinical settings like hospitals and healthcare. He was actually trained in Zen Buddhism, and he just kind of repurposed and reworked the language so that it would be applicable for the lens of science and not so mystical, shall we say. So how do you do it? Well, really, again, I want you to think of just paying attention to the present moment, but imagine that your awareness or your focus can be kind of like a light. Okay, so you can have like a laser beam that's laser focused on something, or more like a lamp that's more expansive and not really targeted. So in Zazen, I think it's closer to that second analogy. It's sort of this expansive awareness of the present moment. And I would advocate a kind of a balance of not necessarily, super like charged up and excited, but also it's not a relaxed state. In fact, one of the teachers that I lived with when I was living as a monk, he taught that it should be like a Doberman on a sit-stay command. So if you can picture like an attack dog or a hunting dog, but his owner tells him stay, and it's sitting there, but it's sort of like pretty activated and intensely focused. That's kind of the energetic balance that we want to have. So I will now throw up an image here on the posture. And so you can see kind of two options here. One of them is the more traditional full lotus pose. The other is sitting in what we call seiza, which is on a seiza bench, which is that one where I'm on my knees. So coming back to me, if you look at that image, you would have seen a few things, right? The way you're sitting, so full lotus, you have one ankle on each thigh, knees resting on the ground. And then really important point that a lot of people mess up with meditation is you ideally want your hips above your knees. That'll help you to sit much longer and sit much more comfortably. You want a neutral spine. You can imagine kind of being pulled up through a string through the top of your head. So your back's not arched up with your chest puff up, but you're not hunched over. It's sort of just this neutral balance. And if you're looking at me from the side, you don't want to be leaning forward or leaning back, but just kind of centered, all one plane. And then same thing applies if you are in the seiza posture, except of course you're going to be on your knees, but same thing applies for the upper body. And then the chin you can tuck slightly in, but again, kind of through the crown of the head lifting up. So you're not like this, but you're also not up here in the clouds, right? Sort of this firm posture, and your gaze is a few feet out in front of you on the ground with eyes open. That's another important distinction between Zazen and other forms of meditation. The idea here is, again, bringing you into this awareness of the present moment, and so your eyes are going to be open. Now let's talk about the mental side of it. What are we doing here? Because I just said some of the explanations I gave can be pretty confusing, and in fact, Dogen Zenji in one of his passages says, basically the art of Zazen is not thinking, and he says, how do you think not thinking? By not thinking, or something like that. It's sort of this word play. But I would say the essential attitude is Zen mind, beginner's mind. And this comes from a book with that same title by Suzuki Roshi that I highly recommend. And he talks about this quote. It says, in the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities. In the expert's mind, there are few. So beginner's mind is bringing an attitude of openness and curiosity, but really intense attention to whatever it is that you're doing. And so as you're sitting, you're almost being kind of curious, you're open-minded, and you're just exploring whatever comes up in your experience of your own mind and of reality. And I want to talk about particularly this idea of mindset again. There's a passage in here called control, and he has this really great metaphor where he talks about to give your sheep or cow a large, spacious meadow is the best way to control him. And so what this is getting at is that as you sit, naturally, your awareness is going to be directed all these different things, and you're going to be thinking about whatever, imagining this or that. But again, you just come back to just sitting and experiencing the present moment. And then I'm off over here and then I come back. And it's that recurring process. But as you do this, mental images will come up, fantasies will come up, worries will come up, images will pop in your mind. And just like he said, by not trying to control your cow, just giving it a large, spacious pasture, that's the kind of attitude we want to have with our own mind. Is it's just things are coming up. And one of my Zen teachers said, Zazen is letting come and letting go whatever comes and whatever goes. So there you have it. This should get you started again on a little bit of what is Zazen and how is it unique? What's kind of the history of it? And then should get you started hopefully on doing it, right? You have those two images you saw of me where you're sitting in full lotus. You can also sit in half lotus where you only have one ankle on a thigh. Sometimes that's a bit more comfortable. You can sit seiza, which is on your knees, however is most comfortable for you. And then you're essentially just paying attention to the present moment non-judgmentally. So letting come and letting go, whatever comes and whatever goes, just sitting, coming back again and again to just sitting, just this awareness of your own experience of the present moment. So I hope this video is helpful. I have a more detailed video as well right here on the posture of Zazen, where I'll do more of a formal breakdown on it. But hope this is helpful. And you can come back here, of course, for all sorts of videos on the art and science of happiness. That's all for now. This has been your happiness nerd, Jackson Kirchis, and I'll see you next time.